Thanks for joining us for the first official sort of presentation on the forum. Um, in order to get things started, we were looking at different topics to actually just start the conversation. And we decided to go with blockchain today, just to start to speak about some of the applications and why it's a nice fit for Industry 4.0. And just a little bit of disclaimer, this is not a cryptocurrency talk, so we won't be tackling any investment insights. We don't have those. So just to get us going, I'm going to speak very high level about the fundamentals of blockchain, just so that we can understand how it actually then applies to Industry 4.0. Feel free to stop me as we go, but it should be a pretty quick talk, maybe 20 minutes maximum. We should be able to get through this content. So just to get going. Okay, so blockchain was originally applied to fintech solutions. The main driving force was this requirement to move away from centralized banking institutions that were basically, people felt, taking away from our rights to actually act in an autonomous fashion. And also the limitations of many people around the world not actually being compliant with the regulations and requirements that banking institutions and financial institutions required of them. So the first application of blockchain was, as you know, Bitcoin, where people were able to then informally engage with transfer of value across parties without the need for the middleman, which is a bank. But what came out of it as we moved from sort of this centralized model with the financial institution sitting in the middle there to this decentralized model is that we saw that the security benefits that blockchain allowed us and provided meant we could actually apply it to different ecosystems, such as identification, qualifications, health records, insurance, and now in the last few months, also looking at it as an application for the value chain. And just to elaborate on this, Microsoft has recently voiced support on the ID 2020 Alliance, which is a public-private partnership designed to solve the widespread lack of identity documentation. So the partnership's mission there is to aid roughly 1.1 billion people around the world who are without legal forms of ID. So this is like refugees, those sorts of people, and are collaborating with Accenture on a blockchain-based identity prototype. So these are real world solutions that have nothing to do with money transfer and cryptocurrency now. And then just to get a little bit into how blockchain actually works. So as some of you may know, blockchain is very reliant on miners. And the reason I want to get into this is to actually start to explain the different applications, especially in terms of IoT. Now, traditional blockchain is based on miners who actually provide the proof of work that validates the transactions that are happening. And what this proof of work does is that it activates computing power in the network to ensure that you can't get bad actors or attackers who would, if they had the predominant sort of computing power in the network, be able to create fraudulent records. So double spend value, or assign or sell the same house twice, you know, those sorts of things. So by creating the proof of work algorithm and keeping that computing power going, that's how miners actually create this proof of work. Now, obviously, this poses some difficulty, because if we then want to apply this to devices that are then securely transferring information from one device to another, and we need to pay miners, then this becomes quite a difficult discussion, because where does that value come from if we're not transferring money? If we're transferring information, there is no value, monetary value associated with it. So this is what gave birth to the DAG, which is a slightly more sophisticated model of the blockchain, and it stands for Directed Acyclical Graph. And what that means is, if you need to stop me and ask me questions, please do, just wave at me. Okay, so what this means is that the DAGs are different from blockchain, because in blockchain, you actually split the two parties. You have the transacting parties and the miners. But with a DAG, every transactor is then also fulfilling the opportunity of the function of a miner, simply by being in the network. So what that means is that instead of a transactor paying for the validation of a transaction through a portion of that transaction value, they are now paying by basically using their computing power in the network to keep the network secure. Is that clear? Everyone with me there? So this is why DAGs like Hashgraph, and more importantly, IOTA, are blockchain-based technologies that are actually aimed specifically at the machine-to-machine economy and machine-to-machine interfaces. And this obviously is a very important application for the Internet of Things, where when we want devices to actually speak to each other automatically and be intelligent, those devices are then also validating all the other devices in the network and keeping them safe and secure from cyber attacks or someone trying to upload false information or viruses or all of that sort of stuff. So this is why these developments in blockchain are actually enabling us to apply them to Industry 4.0. So as you can see from the slide, blockchain has a lot of limitations, but right now there's a lot more development. It's a lot further along in its sort of maturity, and it has been used a lot more, whereas DAGs are there's still a lot of development required, and they're a little bit immature in terms of full-blown applications. But from the research that I've done and from all of the sort of opinions that I've read, DAGs will replace blockchain, especially in the machine-to-machine economy. And IOTA is one foundation that's actually working purely to achieve that goal. And I've got some great links and articles that I'll share with you at the end. And one of them in particular is a video by this very crazy programmer called Siraj. And he takes you through the fundamentals and differences of blockchain and DAGs. And yeah, that's where I learned most of the stuff that I've been able to pick up. So the nice thing about DAGs is they're faster, they're more secure, as opposed to blockchains, which have finite capability, and blockchain gets slower the more people and the more nodes that are active on it, whereas DAGs actually get faster and faster. So definitely the right way to go, as they are properly scalable model, whereas blockchain is not so scalable. So moving along to get to the gist of the matter. So this is what I was able to collect in terms of not fintech cases. And I just wanted to mention that these were all from 2 articles. So I didn't even have to look very far to find very decent references from very big companies that are engaging with blockchain technology in order to solve some of their current issues, and mostly around the value chain. So I just wanted to go through some of these examples with you to help demonstrate how these companies are using blockchain. So the first one is BHP Billiton. Now, obviously one of the largest mining companies in the world. And what they're doing is they're using blockchain to record the movements of well-bore rock and fluid samples so that they can better secure and track the movement of these samples. And what they're doing is because they rely on so many outside vendors across the globe, by putting everyone on like a blockchain platform, they're creating transparency of movement of these samples. So any contractors that want to engage with them are then forced to use the blockchain technology that they're developing. So this is still a project, and it's still a protocol that they're trying to develop, but this is the way they're moving to actually try and bring that security that blockchain offers into the way they do business. Then the other one is Maersk, which is, they've actually started a joint venture, which is based purely on logistics. So here, like purely value chain. And what they're trying to address is, again, so many different parties are part of the value chain conundrum, that one missing piece of paper, one sort of incorrectly scheduled movement, and we can lose a lot of value and a lot of time. And what that means, especially when we think about perishable goods, you know, the damage can be irrevocable. So the idea is to actually use blockchain again, where you've got lots of different parties and actually have them log movement through the blockchain. So again, transparency, immutable. If someone flags a transfer of an item from one party to another, that record cannot be tampered with. It's secure and it's safe. And this is obviously very important when we consider factors like 90% of goods are traded through sea freight, you know, so these are important aspects to actually take control of. Another example that I like is actually the food safety collaboration. So here we've got lots of big players in food manufacture and food supply. So Walmart, Nestle, and Unilever are actually joining forces to create a blockchain tool around food safety. And one of the cool things Walmart has done, they've been working with IBM since 2016, and they claim to have reduced the time to track mango shipments. It used to take them 7 days. Now they can do it in 2.2 seconds, which is phenomenal. I mean, yeah, that absolutely speaks for itself. So again, that ability to be very, very reactive and proactive, and to see when problems are coming and actually save the losses, especially when we're dealing with perishable goods. Then IBM and Samsung are working on a concept known as ADEPT, which is autonomous, decentralized, peer-to-peer telemetry. So this here is very much an Industry 4.0 case, where they're talking about industrial IoT, leveraging mesh networks and allowing these devices to speak to themselves and to each other, obviously. And this allows, again, for sort of safe deployment of software updates, make sure that they can remove bugs from the system, optimize things like energy management. So some really, really important things that can happen automatically without the need for human intervention, but still in a secure and transparent way. So these are great wins for if they can get these things to actually work properly. But the bottom line is, so everything you read, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of doom and gloom, oh, this will never work, or there's all of this, oh, it's fantastic and it's going to solve everything and we're never going to have a problem again as humanity. And the thing is that there are some very hard truths about where we are with blockchain at the moment. So firstly, like I've said, the blockchains and the block DAGs, they're still immature. They still have a lot of development and growing and learning. And sort of the understanding of suitable protocol for application. And then one thing that I found very, very important to take note of is that the quality of the security that blockchain technology can provide is dependent on the programmers and the quality of the cryptography that they are able to program. But these programmers, they're human, you know, and they will make errors and they will make mistakes. So just because someone says, oh, we have blockchain and we're going to use blockchain, doesn't mean it's infallible. You know, you still have to make sure that the integrity of the cryptography behind that blockchain is actually fit for purpose. So don't take that sort of thing for granted. There are a lot of companies like IBM that are actually providing blockchain as a service platforms. And this might be an easier, more suitable option for smaller companies. But what we can see now with the big players looking to blockchain, it's going to become prudent for vendors or customers to be willing to engage with these big players on blockchain platforms. So being aware of them and understanding how to engage with them effectively, and the sort of internal procedures and protocols of your own company and how that applies and may need to be adapted to meet blockchain standards. So these are the sort of more immediate sort of changes that I see happening. And then again, just to tie it off, there are definitely wins, but we need to be level-headed. We need to make sure that we're applying blockchain in a meaningful way. You know, where security is not so much of an issue, we don't really want to put a blockchain on that, you know? And anything that's a closed system that uses blockchain, that's just a ton of computing power for no good reason. The beauty of blockchain is how it allows different parties to trust each other, to be open and to make sure that the work is happening in the way people are claiming it's being happening. So to put a blockchain as an internal process thing within your company, that doesn't make any sense because you know the people that work in your company. So it's things like that that we need to be clever about, so that when we use these awesome technologies, we use them for the right purpose. Okay. And I'm going to stop my blockchain talk right there. So these are the links. They will be available on the site. So the YouTube video that I'm talking about is this one. It's 25 minutes long, but he's a highly entertaining speaker, so you should be able to get through it. And then the rest of these are just different opinions. The first one on Medium is actually a very nice sort of history of blockchain and how it's developed. And the rest are more just how they're being applied to the supply chain and what the potential challenges and benefits are. Okay, great stuff. Thank you, guys.
Good. Thank you, Alicia. You can stop sharing, and then maybe we can have some questions. And maybe just as a note, we will take down the questions that's asked you. If we don't have an answer, we're having a second session. I think it's next month, Alicia.
Yes. So we actually want to do a second sort of Q&A session next week. If we get enough questions and people want to have more of a discussion about it. So that's entirely up to the audience. But I think we haven't formalized how we want the questions to come through, but I think the Slack channel might be easiest. And then we'll see how many questions we get and then put a session together based for that. But also we can just have an open discussion about blockchain next week if people read the articles and want to discuss it some more. And then what I am doing is I'm lining up another sort of information sharing session next month in October with a company called Wakamo. And they're going to talk to us more about IoT devices and practical sort of implementation based on some of the test work they've been doing with UCT here in Cape Town. So that should be an interesting discussion as well.
Okay, good. Before I jump into questions, because I've got a couple of questions, I'm just going to flash a quick picture on the screen For those who are not part of the Slack, they can also access the website. They'll see the URL, and there is a contact us link on that URL, or you can join the mailing list, but you can get to us if you want to post any questions. So herewith, you can see there it's 4IR RSA forum, www.4ir.co.za, and you can access that URL to post questions if you're not part of the Slack network yet. Good. So this video will be made available for review should you want to look at it again and maybe formulate some new questions for the next session. But in terms of myself, I would like to have a better understanding of how important security is in terms of IoT. You know, what are the typical risks that's associated with it? And you've partially answered the other question, is who's the players in South Africa that one can approach if you want to start looking into blockchain, and who can help with implementations or proof of concept. You've mentioned IBM's already doing it as a service. And then obviously the question around that is are they affordable to the small and medium enterprises? Because generally that is a bit of a challenge in terms of affordability. Thirdly, in terms of training and education, you know, what is the level of knowledge that a business should have with regards to blockchain? You know, and where could one probably go and learn some skills, gain some skills in training on blockchain itself? And then lastly, you've mentioned there that they are not matured yet, they're in the infancy. But what is the expected maturity curve in terms of years that the industry forecasts from where they are now to being mature?
Cool. What was the first question again?
How important is security in terms of IoT?
Okay, right. So security is very important in terms of IoT because of just because there isn't value being associated with the transfer of information doesn't mean that the opportunity for cyber hacking or sort of virus deployment into a system isn't there. So if you think of all of these IoT devices that are gathering information and feeding it to a data analytics center or some sort of big data computing system, the opportunity for an attacker to send a virus through a particular device as, let's say, a pretend software upgrade that can then affect that entire system is obviously a very big concern. And then also the opportunity to, let's say, jeopardize the integrity of the information being received from a device. So if it's a safety thing, let's say it's a temperature control on a distillation column in a petrochemical refinery. If someone were to basically mess with the integrity of the readings that are coming through or confuse the device, and then the fail-safe doesn't work because we're not receiving the right information, those are potentially disastrous. So security is very important. I mean, that's not only achievable through blockchain, but blockchain is one of the ways that they're looking to actually tackle some of those difficulties.
Okay, thank you.
And then the big sort of players. So in South Africa, the main team that I'm aware of actually are working with the Ethereum blockchain, and they are called Linum Labs. To date, they have not actually created applications for Industry 4.0. They're still very much based on fintech and then also identity sort of applications for this. And they're also doing stuff with the insurance sector on blockchain. So we're not seeing a lot in South Africa around sort of blockchain capability for Industry 4.0 just yet. But Microsoft IBM, the bigger companies are definitely looking at creating this blockchain as a platform and blockchain as a service capability that, depending on the sort of solution that you are looking to achieve, you could then engage with them. Another company, also not local, is called SyncFab. And they have apparently started creating the value chain capability of blockchain that they are offering and selling to different companies. Again, I think that because you want blockchain to be this multi-party sort of environment where you're engaging with lots of different people, I think the beauty of blockchain comes from actually creating first the network of potential people to engage with, and then building a blockchain on that capability. I think standalone companies shouldn't really be thinking about blockchain yet unless they want to test it. And one of the ways that they test it, there's a law firm here in Cape Town, and their name completely, Bowmans. Bowmans deployed a blockchain internally for the purposes of sort of an internal loyalty and reward system for their employers. And they did that purely as a test case to have like a live blockchain running within the company so they could learn and, figure out different ways of applying that technology, which I think is nice because they actually differentiated themselves by engaging with a live system instead of just hypothesizing about it. But at the same time, all they did was use a lot of computing power to do something that didn't really need a blockchain. It's basically, it's throwing a sledgehammer at, like, I don't know, a sewing needle. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So forgive my analogies, they are random at the best of times. So the thing is that you need to find a system that requires the benefits that blockchain can give you before you start engaging with blockchain. So blockchain needs to be the thing where you say, we want to engage with more small companies, but we have trust issues. We have, every time we try to engage with a smaller company, we don't get what we're supposed to get. The contracts are complicated. It's not simple. Then the application of blockchain with smart contracts, with clearly defined milestones, and that transparency, then it becomes a good fit for your company. So I would say first figure out, is your pain point a pain point that can be addressed by blockchain in a meaningful way, and then start to develop it. I don't know if I answered all of your questions, Johan. There were a lot.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much. So yeah, essentially what if I can maybe summarize what I understood is that it's really got to be a fit for purpose type environment. If there's high risks associated, typically like with the GDPR and the Copy Act, these are mechanisms to ensure that the data integrity is protected and the information is safe. But don't just do it because someone said it's safe. There's got to be a need.
Yeah, because blockchain, it takes up a lot of computing power. Up until recently, jet fuel was the biggest sort of energy consumption on the planet. And now it's data centers. And it's data centers that are mining blockchain, So the thing is, it takes a lot to use blockchain. So you don't just want to throw it at any little thing. It's got to be something meaningful. If you're building like a power station somewhere, and you've got 70 different teams providing you with a whole range of things, and you need to keep track of what's happening and make sure that things are happening transparently and correctly and in line with a contract, then blockchain makes sense, But if it's you and the company next door and the other company down the road and you all know each other, then don't use blockchain. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay, I see Jaco Miller has raised his hand. He's got a question.
Okay.
Yes, Johan. You mentioned something. How many years will it take to develop it?
Right.
And I can't help thinking, this is not industry related, but
Yeah.
obviously blockchain is used to hide information from external people.
Yes.
Or external customers. So, say for example, it's not happening in South Africa, but the USA and China, the government keeps track of everything. It's with regards to crime, to stop it, to track possible crime happening.
Right. Yeah.
So, why would the government buy in to develop blockchain if it will prevent them from accessing the data they need?
Okay, that's a great question. So yes, very much with Bitcoin, with the different cryptocurrencies, we see this black market sort of use of this ability to transfer value and transfer illicit goods under cover of, this anonymity, because you are basically identified by a hash, which is, no one can break it down and actually say, oh, it's Johan, or it's Alicia. So yes, that is a very difficult thing. But in terms of its application in non-cryptocurrency sort of applications, it's more about creating the understanding between two parties that the thing that was transferred has been transferred, or the container that came in on this ship on Tuesday was handed over to the courier company on Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. And when the courier company turns around and says, no, we did not receive that log, then the blockchain is immutable. Like, no one can go in and mess with that record of transfer because it's an agreed form of transfer. So it's, in this application, it's not so underhanded because it's more around the smart contracts, digitizing systems. So we rely less on paperwork that can get lost or used to wrap someone's lunch, or all manner of crazy things where we then can't track the process. Blockchain helps to fix those things, especially when you're dealing with tons of different companies who have different procedures. It also creates that uniformity of process so that we know what's going on. Does that answer your question, Jaco? Cool.
Yeah, maybe if I can just add on to that for Jaco as well. It's really to ensure that the information that's traveling between parties are secure. In today's times, you can still encrypt information, and it's fairly difficult to decrypt that if you don't have the encryption keys available for that. Now, government obviously can access information. They can request that if they suspect that there's any issues. But in fintech, they're using it to ensure the transactions are safe and that it's not being tampered with. And if you want to make sure that the integrity of your data between untrusted parties, I mean, if we have a number of people in the supply chain, to ensure that that information stays correct and safe without the interference of external parties. And we know that government and legislation is normally a little bit of lagging behind in terms of technology, but I can probably foresee that in the very near future that there will be some legislation with regards to blockchain within the government.
And then, sorry, Johan, your last question was the sort of development cycle of blockchain. Bitcoin's been around for about 10 years, and it is functioning, but it's not established. They are still changing things. They are still developing things. So in terms of the development cycle, it's definitely an exponential cycle because it was very slow in the beginning. and adoption and uptake and testing obviously is more challenging in the beginning. But I would say probably with big players like IBM and Microsoft now pushing, I would say probably in the next 5 to 10 years, we'd probably see pretty decent adoption, especially for IoT. I think that is an application that really makes sense for blockchain. So even if it doesn't become established as a fintech solution, I think in this industrial sort of age, it'll be a very good tool to have.
Do you see the protection of personal information driving things like blockchain, especially with IoT, wearable devices and those type of applications?
I think protection is important. I mean, we see a lot of conversation about how people are worried about cybersecurity, especially in their personal capacity. And I personally think that there's a lot of opportunity around identification, around qualifications, creating that honesty trail. So if you're applying for a job and you say, these are my qualifications, if that's transferred or secured using blockchain technology, then the person on the receiving end has a level of comfort that, this has not been messed with, this has not been tampered with. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there to create a very real solution to some of the challenges that we face every day in terms of trust. Yeah.
Thank you. Right, is there any more questions for Alicia from the audience? Well, that's good. That's it. So I think that's in a wrap. We thank everyone for joining. We thank everyone for questions. Hopefully, if you can think of any more questions, please go and contact us on the website. And some of you might know us personally. You're welcome to approach us. And then I'm looking forward to see you next week in terms of the Q&A. I'm surely going to think of a couple of more questions, and then we can formulate something right.
And also, Johan, can I just step in here? If there are particular topics that you would like to put forward for discussion, where we can maybe look if we can find an expert to actually talk to us about those things, then please let us know. And also, if you have pointers or suggestions about the way the talk went, was it suitable, was it not suitable, was the content too random, that sort of feedback would be very helpful at this point.
Yes, and if you think you want to present yourself, if you've got something to tell us in terms of Industry 4.0 and all the different topics in there, you're welcome to contact us, and we can schedule something around that.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you, everybody.